reason we have lots of time.
It works that way sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back here. Share screen. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Well, you guys are, I'm going to go through this kind of maybe faster than I usually do, because you guys know all the stuff about Alliance for Smiles primarily because Stan's really the one that got me going in this program. And it's not my first international experience with Rotary, but it's my really first what I'd call hands-on. Prior, I had traveled to India with Nancy Barbie and about 20 other Rotarians, many of which were in the governor's stream, and many of them are my classmates, and it really got us close, and it gave me a real feeling, A, what a true third world country was like, and B, what Rotarians outside this country are capable of doing. So with that, I'll get started with this. As you know, Alliance for Smiles is all over the world in third world countries, and their primary goal is to repair children and young adults with cleft palates and related things, including some training and some dental work. So we'll go from there. I say it's a small world because no matter where you go, run into people that know about your country or maybe even your town. And as that comes up during this presentation, I'll talk to you about that. The trip, my travel, not counting getting from Hertford to JFK, was 6,300 miles each way, but I was probably one of the least traveled people to go. I estimated that the average person's traveled about 15,000 miles back and forth, or about 15 times around the world. And we flew from, most of us from JFK, landed in Egypt, and you could see point B in the upper right-hand corner, and you see on this slide that river, the Nile River that goes down into Sudan. And here's a kind of blow up, and we landed in Cairo, and you can see that there's that river again, and there's Aswan down at the bottom where we took a second flight to. You get outside of that river, and it's a sandbox all the way to Morocco. I mean, there is nothing. It was very interesting. It was very interesting country. 95% of the people in Egypt live along that river.
I just opened the door. I didn't put it in.
Jimmy, I'm trying to listen to him.
How you doing, Cara?
I'm fine.
All right.
My husband is
Anyway,
moving
all right. When we landed in Cairo, we had 6 hours at a time, and a bunch of us were like type A, and it's like, what do? We can't sit here for 6 hours. So we went down to the lobby and got a tour guide, and we went and toured the pyramids. So that was kind of neat. It wasn't on my schedule, but
lucky you.
It was a great box to check, including the Sphinx, and I got my picture taken with a camel herder, and everyone there is looking for a few bucks. And just to prove I'm legit, I'll wear my little hat here. I usually dress in scrubs when I do this, but we're a little bit of a hurt. And I learned as a member of a staff, if you wear scrubs and carry a clipboard around in a hospital, you can get away with about anything. So that was a good experience. While we were in Cairo, I looked around, and Dan's a PDG, and some of us joked that that's a pizza delivery guy. So when I saw Papa John's in the back of that motorcycle, I learned a couple things. Fast food is universal, and that guy's probably a retired Rotarian. Down lower left-hand corner is this is entrepreneurship in a third world country. That's a bicycle shop, and you bring in your bike and they repair it. They have parts behind the door. Most of this work seems to be done outside. The guy on the right, that's his livelihood, selling bananas, and it's a beautiful little cart, and he's in front of another franchised chill out cafe and Italian restaurant. And all this was in Cairo, where in the upper left-hand corner, you see that Volkswagen bus up there. That was the predominant vehicle of transportation in Cairo. Many of them had their doors, because some of the older ones are air-cooled engines, and the doors were all hung up with bungee cord, and but they were everywhere. I never saw so many buses, and maybe you know that they're really getting collectible in the U.S. This is kind of a typical scene you'll see. The courtyard's kind of clean, but you see this everywhere. There'll be a trash hopper, and people don't mind cleaning up, but the city has seemed to get problem to finishing the cleanup. So that was kind of indicative of what we saw. Stucco and block construction. Vegetation wasn't everywhere, but it was sparse and usually in the shadows of a fence or a wall. Another indication of the wide range of transportation you saw in Egypt, anywhere from a donkey cart to a van. And yes, that's graffiti. Can anyone read that? No one? That says "Welcome, Frank," just so you didn't, in case you knew. And of course, the most reliable form of transportation is on the left side there. The donkey went by every day, and every day the guy had to add water to whatever he was doing over there. This is a hot rod shop. There's a little building, a little wall, and he paints them in there. And he's got this, the white car in front is a 504 Peugeot. Now in Aswan, where we ended up, that was the predominant mode of transportation. So if I'm ever stuck for a car and one of those is available, I'm going to buy it because they can endure all that sand and dust there. And I saw them everywhere. They must be a tremendously reliable car. This is, well, if I told you were in California or Nevada, you'd say, yeah, it kind of looks like it. But this is the fragility of the Aswan area and the Nile River. You got this beautiful river, and it's rock, and the water's clear, and you can see fish in it, and you get 100 yards past it, and it's the desert. And it's just interesting. Again, this is another scene, and there's some buildings at the top. Those are Nubians, and the Nubians are kind of like indigenous to the area, and they live in brightly colored domiciles and businesses. And if you look closely along the tree line, you'll see camels. And so on that part where we're at, just outside the city, maybe 5-10 miles, they're little. You can see them. There's camels in there. There's one sitting right between the two piles of trees. I took a camel ride, and that was interesting. We had a little bit of free time, and we took advantage of that. But again, the river was pretty neat. This is looking out the back of our hotel. There was a pool area. I seldom saw anyone in it. The food was good, mostly outdoors. And you can see we're right at the Nile River, and on the other side of that river, it's desert. Our rooms weren't nearly as nice as the outside of the hotel. Everyone had a problem in their room. I only had one. The tub had a hump in the middle where they set it on hardened concrete, and somebody had kicked a hole in the side of it to get the water to drain. But since I took showers, I didn't worry about that. Stan, I don't know what your experience was in Morocco, but I'm sure it was something similar. This is the team we put together 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. We're 24 folks. The ones with the Rotary logo next to them in the corner are Rotarians. And Sophie Stone is from Paramus, New Jersey. And her club donated substantially to get this going. And she was kind of the supervisor, made things go, did the organizing and so forth. The two people next to them, Carla and Devi, were the surgeons. I'm not sure really where Carly was from, but Devi was from India, and he was one of the two surgeons. Jilan is an anesthesiologist from Vietnam, and Judy O. Young was the other anesthesiologist. Well, there were 3 of them. And her part-time job, she lives in San Francisco, but immigrated here from China. She belongs to an EMT group that focuses on rock concerts. So she's met every rock concert performer you could imagine, and probably treated many of them for things they shouldn't do. Bakar Syed on the end is an anesthesiologist originally from Pakistan, and we had a great time comparing political viewpoints and just things in general. He lives in Milwaukee as well. And second row, we had a pediatrician. Ann Madden was the pediatric aftercare nurse. The next 3, Patrick and Karen and Mary, were the dental group. And they got there before us and did some training for nurses and set up their little camp. Because it's a related item, when you do oral surgery on some of the older kids, they need to have some teeth removed sometimes, and they examined everyone who was there. Ann Partridge is the lead nurse. She was from Australia. The dental team was from Chicago, I believe. Next row, Yippee Yang was another. She was from Formosa, I believe. Jerry Dunphy came here from Brazil, and Melanie Blanchano went by Mel Blanc, which made life easier for me. She's from Mali in Africa. Next to her, Lauren Lusk lives in Las Vegas and Oakland. She travels back and forth and splits her nursing duties. Allison Healy, I met Allison Healy largely because of Stan Keeler bringing her to our district conference, and she brought a presentation, and I guess I swallowed the grape Kool-Aid for that while, and thanks, Stan. Paul Vasquez is the guy on the ground and back at home that makes everything happen. He is headquartered in San Francisco and travels to most of these. Was he bit with all on yours, Stan? I'm catching my breath while you unmute.
Yeah. No, he doesn't go to all of them. He goes to many of them. He's
Okay.
the director of operations.
Yeah, and lower left-hand corner is a fellow named Antonio Butt from Mexico, and he took pictures, and some of the pictures are for PR and all that, but every kid that gets through this program or into the program gets his photo taken primarily so it's part of the identification proof that you're doing the right thing to the right person. And then, of course, we have some before and after photos. Bob Herman and Dan next to him, they're actually married. They live in San Francisco. Bob was a record keeper, and Dan made sure that the moms and dads were moved around and got a chance to talk to all of the medical professionals involved. Sierra Hess is from Oakland, and she was just about to graduate and got tremendous experience going to each and every station of this process. And Bruce was the videographer, and Frank was the dead weight. So this is the team of Rotarians that were with us. You met Pat and myself and Bob in the background. In the front row is Mattia. I don't know if she was with you, but she's from Morocco, Stan. And
Right.
she spends her weeks in Cairo and Aswan, and she was a good help. But the real star is this lady in this beautiful blue gown. We'll talk about her in a bit, and then there's Sophie and Dan. But Iman Salam, whenever you do an international grant program, you really need somebody, a Rotarian on site that you can count on. And I can tell you, she was astounding. She made sure that there was somebody to greet us at the airport, that we got to the hotel with transportation every day from the hotel to the hospital. She made sure she brought in a professional chef to cook our lunches. She made sure that every evening we had an opportunity for some cultural enlightenment, whether it was with another Rotary Club or the district folks or an ethnic dancing. It was just a great person. And she, aside from all that, is in her Rotary Club, she establishes a group of doctors and nurses that does medical convoys and travels to some of these remote villages offering medical services that they just couldn't get without her. She's a stellar Rotarian, and this mission wouldn't have been nearly successful without her. I didn't know it was a lady until I got there, but it didn't matter, as we all know now. The budget, a total of $71,000. As you can see at the top, the biggest item is air travel. Their Avia travel service cut us some pretty good rates. So that was one of the benefits of using Alliance for Smiles. They have a pretty good partnership with their abilities to schedule all this. The hotel and the meals were pretty big on the agenda, cost-wise, medical supplies. McKesson's pretty well known around the world from what I've learned over the last few months with medical supplies everywhere. We shipped a lot of stuff there. Most of us took a huge suitcase that we were told to fill up with stuff and took it there. And then we bought medical stuff from the hospital there and stuff from local vendors, including soft drinks and tea and sandwiches and so forth. You could see there were $1,500 of baggage fees. And Iman took care of all the local vendors, the advertising to get folks there. I had a fee for nurses that I gave directly in cash to the hospital administrator. working in a third world country, things aren't always as straightforward as they are elsewhere. I never did get an invoice, so I made one up. And so forth. So anyway, when you do a trip, Rotary gets their 10%. So that's an interesting philosophy that I learned, that when you do a global grant, Rotary takes a cut of that for what they do, and they do plenty. Here's some of the sourcing, DDF from our district. That was 2 years worth of DDF because this grant took 2 years to write, and I dipped into my account, and Tracy gave me some money, and the Paramus Rotary Club gave something. There's something called a Sonoma Sister Club, and I'm sure Stan's familiar with them. That's a local group that are not Rotarians in the San Francisco area. And you can see they're really focused on helping Alliance for Smiles partnership with us to a big amount of $24,000. And then Hertford Rotary Club got $8,500 in there. And a lot of it's matched by Rotary to match the total account. We didn't spend all that money, and we gave Rotary back a bit of money. When I got there, one of the meetings, I got to meet the governor from their district, Sheriff Wally, and we swapped pennants and banners, and it was always good meetings. And this fella next is from the Sonoma Sister Club. Have you met George McHale, Stan?
No, I have not.
He just came over for a day or two to see how things were going because it was our first time in Aswan. And pretty impressive guy and pretty impressive group. This is a huge part of our success. And maybe some of you remember American Field Service in the U.S., where maybe someone in your high school went to Brazil and a Brazilian came to your high school. Well, these are kids that do that, except they don't call it American Field Service. It's just AFS, all capital letters, as opposed for Alliance for Smiles, which is capital A, capital S, small f, just to differentiate. But these kids have all spent a year in the United States at some high school, maybe in the last year or two, but prior they were excellent with their English. They understood American humor, our idioms, and really the fella on the far right, they're all smiling. So the one with his eyes closed, he was probably the most impressive guy on the team because he's blind and yet he walked people around. He joked around with us. They're all great kids and really made a big, big difference in the success of this trip as well. This is the manager of the AFS, and she lives in Germany and travels all over Europe and North Africa. It must be an interesting job. Can any of you read this? It says, "Welcome, Frank, the best Rotarian in the world. Thank you for coming to Aswan and bringing those other folks with you." All right, that was waiting outside the hospital when we got there. They were looking forward to meeting us. Now, the process, Stan's probably familiar with this and maybe you're bored with it, but there's a multiple step process to this whole event. And you know, when you think of doing this kind of surgery, you think about the surgeon and you think about the patient, but there's so much beyond that that goes on that we had 2 surgeons yet it took 2014 to get there. These are the parents, and unlike most parents, I'll make a couple observations. They're not showing their kid off to you. You know, that kid is born and that kid may stay in a back room, doesn't get out much, and that's part of why we're there. They're also, you see, in what we would call traditional Muslim garb, and it's not that there's a clothing police walking around. That's their individual choices, and some of them go full burqa, and some of them wear simple headdresses. And it's after a while, you just get used to it. And as being an American and with a bunch of people that didn't dress like that, we were never threatened or abused or insulted or anything other than treated with love and respect. And that was a big part of the enlightenment for me for traveling to Egypt. My wife was a little apprehensive, but I can tell you, I felt totally comfortable there day and night. And so that's the first step, is getting them all together on the first day. Now, there was not a huge crowd, and generally we get a big crowd on the first day and then it kind of drops off. Here the opposite happened. We had kind of a small crowd, and then they just come in day after day once the word got out, I guess, because this was our first time there. This is what generally happens, is we interview the parents. You can see the 2 AFS girls there, and they've got a folder. and they're putting data in the folder while Bob is simultaneously putting the same information on a computer that the AFS keeps as a database. So there's always backup records in case the computer doesn't work, and you'll see at the end the folders stay with the hospital. So we're asking questions, and the kids are getting, in the meantime, are in a room getting checked out, their blood pressure, their hemoglobin count, heart rate, and we're asking the parents when was the last time they ate, where do you live, what's good contact information. Everything is critical, and in this trip, one of the most critical things was the phone number we got, because sometimes there were mistakes, and we would fix that. Again, once they got past the first stage, here's the doctor. Well, he's an anesthesiologist looking in the child's mouth with his cell phone. You know, they don't use those little battery-powered lights anymore. Everything's done with that wonderful little cell phone we all carry around. And there's an anesthesiologist, AFS student, another anesthesiologist in the background, and they're talking to mom. And what he is doing is going in there and making an appraisal of how long is that surgery going to last. Is this 1 hour surgery or 3.5 hour surgery? So they need to estimate all of these times so we can start scheduling surgery the next day and keeping in account not only the length of the surgery, but where do they live? Can they come the next day, or do they have to go home and come back for an 8-hour drive? Because we get people from all over the place. And so that's kind of the assessment they're doing there. And there's no sticker on the folder yet, and we'll talk about the folder in a little bit, but they either get a green, yellow, or red dot on that folder, and I can tell you, everyone wants a green dot. This is the kind of headgear that the surgeon wears. She does all her work through that little eyepiece, and she is amazing. Her full-time job is open heart surgery on infants. So I'll show you some other pictures to give you an idea of what she's capable of. This is kind of a bunch of photos in the operating table. Upper left-hand corner is kind of a minor surgery. This kid had some bone that was all piled up, and they had to clean it up a little. It's almost cosmetic, but he needed the surgery. This is one of the typical 1 hour ones. Lower right-hand corner, see that blanket? Sister Club from Sonoma gets those made locally in California, and every kid gets one of those. It's part of the process of, you know, that child having comfort, the parents seeing that, and it's, you know, the mental, the anxiety reducing part of this is so important. And you can see the whole theater of operations, lower left-hand corners, is about the size of a dessert plate. That's it, you know. That, take a look here. This is an infant, and this is her hands. That mouth is about the size of a silver dollar, and she's in there with all kind of instrument, sewing up 3 levels of tissue in that kid's mouth. And I'll show you this kid. This is the 7,000th kid. This is pretty special. This is the 7,000 kid. This is the folder. This one got a green dot. You can see that area in yellow. That's the checklist. So where the kid gets registered, we take the pictures. The nurses check all of that. Every one of those boxes has got to be checked. This folder stays with that child everywhere, and we just keep track. You see, we got phone numbers and backup phone numbers, how long they travel, and the hemoglobin, everything's on here. And this, again, was that 7,000th patient. Think about that, 7,000 of these. This is that child. And we went to the village, and I have a little more detail on that. And I don't have a lot of these kind of pictures. We know that this is a terrible thing to be born with, and if you didn't have the wherewithal to take care of this, you're not destined for a life of joy. And the picture on the right's after surgery, and it looks a little grody under his nose, and that's because after they stitch him up, they put super glue on it, and that kind of comes off in a while. But that kid will be much happier, I'll tell you. It's just an amazing thing that we were part of. It really made me feel good. They put something on our arms called no-no so they don't tear out their stitches. I just thought that was interesting. This is we went and visited the village where the 7,000 student was, and the kids they're all dressed so neat and clean, and they're also good and quiet for a while. But part of what we do there is the dentist and the two dental assistants bring packages of stuff, and every one of us that went brought coloring books and crayons. So we hand out the coloring books, the crayons, the kids are happy, and then these two dental assistants tell them the proper way to brush their teeth and give them a toothbrush and toothpaste. And just to tell you again, it's a small world. You see that Disney lunchbox down there. So Walt's everywhere, pizzas everywhere, bananas are everywhere, and these kids are just adorable. So in the hallway, let's see here. This was when we were about to leave, and these kids were so happy to see us. Anyway, they followed us out on the van, and we had about half a dozen of the van, and they're banging on the doors. It was almost a riot. The teachers totally lost control of those kids. So we got out of there, almost ran some kids over and went down a couple of streets and alleys. And this is kind of the street where this 7,000 patient lived. Well, actually, his grandparents lived there. The parents were so poor, they didn't want to bring us to their house, so they took them to the grandparents' house. This is a neighbor, and it seemed like everyone in that little village knew what we were doing there, and it was nothing but goodwill, and that is such an important part of what we're doing in this process. From the famous village of El Kil Gabar in Egypt, you all know that. This is the mom and dad of that 7,000 child after their surgery. Needless to say, I made sure Hertford, North Carolina got on that banner, and love it, huh? 7,000 of these folks, and now we didn't do 7,000 on this trip, but Alliance for Smile has been doing this for that long that we got the 7,000 child, and it was pretty cool, pretty neat, and it really made us all feel good. This is kind of what the dental assistants bring with them. A lower right-hand corner, that Colgate is like a plastic mouth to show them how to brush their teeth, and they did a lot of procedures, and they trained a bunch of folks in the hospital even before we got there, part of the vocational training team aspect of this global grant. And this is, when I was in this hospital, I was a little unhappy with the cleanliness, and I said this chair that these dental patients get in looks like somebody tried to chew their way out, but I complained a little too much. Some of the veterans of Alliance for Smile said, listen, Frank, we have done this surgery in countries where we're in a tent on dirt, and this is pretty darn good. So I learned to be a little just humbled by the fact of how lucky we are in this country to have top-notch facilities, and that others struggle with that. And on the positive side, I learned that oral surgery is one of the surgeries that is the least infectious, because your mouth is used to handling so many germs. And I imagine these kids get to handle tenfold the amount of dangerous germs that we do, that there's very, very little risk of infection with oral surgery.
Hey, Frank,
Yes, sir. We run out of time?
5 minutes.
All right. I'm going to tell you, this girl got a green dot before and after. These two boys were 14 and 16. Their dad brought them. There's bullies everywhere. These kids didn't have a good bringing up. They had a tough time, but after the surgery, they're quite happy. There's another happy, wasn't all on the operating table. These nurses, the post-anesthesia care unit, these are awesome people. They love these kids. They look after them, and they talk to their parents. They talk to their parents before and after. They give directions to the surgeons and everyone else. They run the show. They're awesome. This is, some of the kids stay overnight, and they go into a post-op area. And at the end of this week, 2 weeks, all the folders go to the hospital. You see there's a red dot. When we come back to Aswan, we'll pull those red dot folders and see if those kids are still in need. This is the group after that. And just a quick summary, we looked at 100 kids. Wasn't as many as we'd like, but we looked at 100. We performed 47 operations. So most of the kids got rejected either because they were too young, too old, bad blood pressure, wrong blood, or were coughing or whatever. We trained 84 local nurses, 5 doctors. So you can see the oral surgery that that dentist had performed, oral surgeon with his team, 70 extractions, cleaning, hundreds given instruction on toothbrush. It was terrific. I went to McDonald's, cleanest McDonald's I ever went. I think the milkshake was made with camel milk. I'm not sure. We did a little sightseeing. Stan, you've been in these countries where they say, come look at my stuff. I will not harass you. I will not harass you. Come on in. I will not harass you. I will not harass you. Watch where you walk, because a camel just went by. The Nubians are a colorful group of folks up on a hill, and you can see by the restaurants. We got some folk singers. And if you forgot your hookah, they have a loaner. And I did do some other stuff in Egypt, and that's for another time. But I got to say, this trip was so rewarding. It brought me to the next level of being a Rotarian. I really felt that we not only affected the patients, but their families and my wife and all our spouses, everyone we met. And we met so many different folks in government and Rotarians and hospital administrators and bus drivers and taxi drivers, tour guides, airport workers, everybody. We put on a positive face for Rotary, for what we do, and Alliance for Smiles for what they do, and I would do it again. And that's all, folks. Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, thank you, Frank, for saving us a little bit there. And
Well, I see most people gave up, so that's okay. Oh, Tamarin's back. I'm happy. I like my hat, Tamarin. You're the one. Tamarin can outfit anyone. I can tell you that.
Well, thanks again. That was awesome. I know Stan's talked a little bit, and as much as you've spoken, Stan has as well, about being almost really a life-changing experience. So someday, who knows? Maybe I'll go out and do one of these.
I'll tell you what. I had to pay my own way, to be honest with you, because I'm not a medical professional, and I got the person at RI that was a bit of a stickler for details. So it cost me a few bucks, but it's a lifetime and a life-changing experience. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All
Yeah.
right.
Thank you, Frank. Good job.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any announcements?
Just next meeting, just a reminder that it is the district governor, Spencer Stanley. There is a board meeting starting at noon, and it is a hybrid meeting, so many of us will be at the restaurant, and the governor will be also. So look forward to that.
And I also sent, go ahead.
He's coming to our place next week too, but via Zoom.
Frank,
Oh yeah. I sent out an email. Everybody should have gotten a link with the Zooms. You can probably see, I don't know if it's just mine because Stan logged in. I'm Stan Keeler too today.
Yeah. Scary. I wonder.
We are recording all of these, even the hybrid meetings. So you will see if you missed one and want to see, just go. We'll post them on YouTube, and you can look at it. We're going to keep them for a month or so. If it's a board meeting or if it's anything in particularly special or different, then we'll probably keep it up there a couple of 3 months. But with that, let's end with the 4-way test. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And adjourn with our motto:
Service above
self.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Frank, big thank you. Big.
Yeah, for real. Thanks a lot, Frank.
Hey, Cora.
Bye. Thank you,
Great
Frank.
talk.
Thank you. Very interesting, Grant. Good work. Changed the world just a little bit.